I think I've got enough parts to do this now. Thanks for tuning in and welcome back to the shop. This is our 2013 Mitsubishi Fuso FG that I'm slowly turning into an Overland camper. A couple of videos back, I built the structure to support the slide-out deck. And after a whole lot of design hours and, you guessed it, printing, I think I'm ready to put it together. The main structure of the deck is made out of 40/40 T-slot. That structure is built onto a set of 500-pound locking slides. I hope that's enough. So that leaves us with what to do with the top surface. We could use aluminum with non-skid on it, we could use wood, paint it, and hope that it doesn't rot, or we could use plastic. Since this is a deck, it would seem somewhat fitting that we use deck boards. These are a composite plastic lumber, and I think they're going to work perfectly. But it does leave us with some interesting problems. These are meant to be placed over top of either another composite board or lumber and nailed or screwed down. That's not going to work with aluminum T-slot. But we do have this nice groove to work with, along with, of course, all the grooves in the T-slot. So you know, that's just an opportunity to design and print something, and that's exactly what I've done. Time for Sketchup and the Elegoo Centauri Carbon. Oh yeah! And if you're thinking that looks like a lot of printed parts, you are absolutely right. We have corners, straight pieces, clips, attachment points, upper trim. And the question is, do they all work? Well, let's find out. When I started designing this, I didn't really have exactly how I was going to do the upper deck in mind, and that means these were just a generic corner piece that I made. I need to replace those with these. Very similar, but they'll actually stand proud of the T-slot extrusion to help capture the edge of the deck boards. All of the parts that I'm using here on the upper side are printed out of PETG Glass Fiber, and the finish on them is very similar to the carbon fiber that I printed earlier. Now to insert these first pieces into the corners, I actually need to remove the outer piece, which is just one bolt on each end. Then I can slide this out and put these in. This should be a simple task, but I've intentionally made them quite a tight fit. With the corner trims in, I can now start putting all the rest of the outer trim pieces in place. The outer pieces should be much easier to install. These just drop into the slot and then pull towards the edge. At least they should. Like this. And then just butt up against the next piece. The real question is, did I get the design right so that they all fit without leaving a gap so that all of my upper holes line up for the next piece to be attached? Well, there's only one way to find out, right? Sometimes math does come in handy. Let's see if I got it right. Oh, look at that. I gotta make sure I've got all these spaces just completely tight together. I'm like a quarter of a millimeter here that I need to squeeze these together. There we go. Look at that. Precision. Because my corner pieces are short, I needed to add an extra hole in the bolt pattern, so that means the spacing here is a little different than all the other holes. That's why I've got to get these pieces in the right order, and also this is shorter, so I had to make the total combined length different from what I did across the front. But that said, they go in the same way. Drop into the slot and then pull off to the side. Same thing, I've got to make sure that the spacing is tight so that the next layer lines up properly. It should be easy as that. And of course, the same thing on the other end. With the outer trims in place, I now have something that my deck boards can butt up against. Now, this outer trim serves two purposes. One, it gives me a clean outer edge once the boards are installed. And two, it allows me to use 24-inch deck boards instead of 26, which divides better into standard length lumber. To secure the deck boards in place to the T-slot, I have designed these little clips which go into the T-slot and then pull up and allow for a screw to come up into the bottom of the board. And the second piece that I'm going to need are these clips, which I have designed and printed to go into the slot on one board to tie it to the next board. I probably could have gotten away without having these, just using the tie downs to the T-slot, but they also serve a secondary purpose. The overall width of the deck, of course, doesn't exactly match the width of the multiples of boards. So these little spacers were designed to also add a 1mm space in between each of the boards to fully finish out the space. Step one, I'm going to attach the first board. And done. Just kidding. There's a lot more to go, but it looks like this lines up, so it's time for some screws. All right, let's see. That could be a bit of an issue. Let's push that back up into place. I think what's happening is two things, actually. So because I didn't pre-drill the board, it's got a bit of a lump forming on the bottom. Maybe we need to remove that material. And then the second thing that's happening is I think the screw is actually catching on the edge of the print, which is pulling it away. Let's try that. There we go. Yeah. I think this is going to be a long process. I think I can get a knife and cut that off. Oops. And of course, I have chosen the best camera angles to show you exactly what I'm doing. Whoops. Just need to get rid of the mass of plastic under there so that this clip can pull up flush and tight. It's also worth noting that I'm using stainless steel screws, so no worry about rusting later. There we go. All right, just 100 more to go. With the first board in place, I can put in the alignment tabs and then put in the second board. The tabs are pretty easy. They just push in and hopefully stay there when I put the next board on. Not much to them. Where I might run into a little bit of a problem is that each of these boards has a bit of a bow to it, and that's why I'm having to clamp it down. And that means it might be hard to line up the tabs on the next board. But the nice thing is I can actually tighten the screw clamps down and then tap the board over, because the clamps can just slide through the T-slot. Board number 2. Oh. So looks like, oh, there we go. Don't really need the clamps on this one. I might want my hammer to tap it forward. Oh, there it is. Just to get the front end to line up properly. There we go. So we now have that board basically in place with no clamps, and a nice consistent gap between the two boards, which should give us the correct spacing when we get to the end. Now it's just a whole bunch of repeating the same thing over and over. Now this next board is a little bit different. It's going to attach the same way, but in the back we have a support for the deck that I've got to put a little bit of a notch in the board so that it can go on each side of it. So we'll start the same way with the clips. I'm going to basically put the board in place and then slide it in so that I know my notch lines up exactly. I know it's roughly in this area, which is going to be around the middle of the board. And after a minute or so of knocking things out of place and into place and out of place and then back into place, right about there. Now I'll slide the deck in just until it touches right there. And we've got about 4.5 inches. It's kind of hard with the camera angle, but that's actually about 4.5 inches that I need to make the notch in the back. So you can see this is the gusset that's coming in here. So we just have to put a notch out like this. I'm going to make the notch wider than it needs to be, and then I'll trim it after I'm done with some 3D printed parts. And hopefully without losing my fingers on the nasty old OSHA violating bandsaw of death in the basement, we'll start with a rough cut and see how close we are. Right about there. Does it clear? It does, but we might need just a little more. I think I just have the tip of that notch to trim out. Well, no. We should be all right. Now, unfortunately, I've run myself out of time today, but I do have more time tomorrow, so I'll see you then. Day 2, and I've just realized that I can put the rest of the boards in and then screw them all down. That might speed things up a little. 1, 2, 3, 4. And it would appear in doing that that either my math is off somewhere or the clips are sinking slightly deeper into the boards than I was expecting. Because as we come across and get to the end, that gap is a little bit too big. But thanks to the T-slot clip design, it's pretty easy to adjust that. And now we have reasonable consistency between all the boards. Now I can attach these ones. Well, I think you get the idea of how these boards get attached. I have skipped the middle row for now, but it's basically more of the same. With the boards in place, I can move to the next layer of the outer perimeter. These pieces fit along the outer edge and help trim it up basically to the level of the top of the board. Now along the ends and on the corner piece, I've incorporated the same tab as I used to connect between the boards so that it can fit into the groove on the edge and help pull the end of the board down tight. Because I can only print a certain size on my 3D printer, all of the pieces incorporate an overlap so that when we're finished, we have a nice clean edge. These seams will also be offset from the seams on the lower piece to give us a bit more strength. Not that there's really much strength needed because for the most part, these are just trim pieces. I'm gonna start with the corner piece and I'm gonna press it in to the edge of the board first. And from there, we'll have to work with getting all of the holes and edges to line up. Once this one's in place, it's going to be a bit of a trick. I've got to actually pop it down just slightly over the edge of this as I'm pressing in the next piece. I might need to give these a little bit of a tap with a hammer because they are designed to be a pretty tight fit. But I think you can get the idea of how this is going to work. Although that was a pretty straightforward section to install, unfortunately there's two things preventing me from finishing this right now. Number one, the bolt that I have securing the bracket for the slide on the far end has a nut that's actually an acorn nut that's a little bit too long, so I can't actually push this in. Number two, I couldn't actually design the upper cap that has a screw go through it that holds everything in place until I got this far. And if you're wondering why there's this little white line all the way around the edge, well, sometimes it's just nice to be able to see in the dark. It shows up a lot better to the naked eye than it does to the camera. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, make sure you hit like, hit subscribe if you haven't already, because I think pretty soon there's something big gonna happen. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.